Hello, this is Freethought Forum, a program of the Atheist Society of Knoxville and the Rationalists of East Tennessee. I am Ben Snyder.
And I'm Faithless Forrest, and we want you to know that if you don't believe in God, you're not alone. Right here in East Tennessee, you can find free-thinking atheists and agnostics. This is a show for them and for people curious about living a life free of supernatural beliefs.
This is a call-in show, however we have only one line, so if you can't get through, we invite you to email us questions at freethoughtforum@yahoo.com.
All right, Ben, why don't you tell us about the Atheist Society of Knoxville?
The Atheist Society of Knoxville is a meetup that meets at a bar or eatery 2 times a week, once on Tuesdays and once on Fridays. Tonight's meetup is at Barley's. It's at 5:30, and we invite you to come out, talk with us if you are friendly to atheists. As Matt Dillahunty says, everyone is welcome to visit our happy hour for food, drink, and conversation. But if you plan to preach, proselytize, provoke, or punch, please don't.
Look for the Richard Dawkins God Delusion standing on one of the tables. All right, well, the monthly activities of the Rationalists of East Tennessee work like this. On the first and third Sunday mornings, we have lively lectures and roundtable discussions, sometimes a guest presenter. On the second Sunday of the month, it's an afternoon book club. April's book is The Fair Society, The Science of Human Nature and the Pursuit of Social Justice by Peter Corning. The fourth Sunday is a reflections gathering. It's a potluck get-together afternoon, usually at someone's home.
Visit our websites for the additional monthly program details, including times and locations.
Ben, today's show is a question to viewers. What is it?
Well, our question is actually on the screen. It is, what would you not do for God?
All right.
But well, first we're going to do some news.
In the news. Well, we have a viewer challenge. It's April 12th. This year is the 2012 Easter. But for Orthodox Easter, it's on April 15th. What's that all about, viewers? Why are there 2 of them?
April 8th is when the...
Did I get it backwards?
Yeah, you said 12th.
12th. All right. I don't claim to read. So if you know,
please give us a call. We would love to hear explanations for the differences if you know.
And of course, if there's 2 Easters, that seems to beg another question.
What is the Orthodox Church and why are there so many churches?
There we go. All right, well, back in 2011, we reported on Harold Camping's predictions. It would be dishonest of us not to recognize that he has apologized. It only recently came to our attention, but back in November, the Huffington Post reported on his apology.
Camping has also retired from his radio show. No word yet if he has returned the money which he had received and asked for from the people who believed his false predictions. The Associated Press quotes Camping, when it comes to trying to recognize the truth of prophecy, we're finding that it is very, very difficult. Is there another possibility he's missing?
All right.
March 24th saw tens of thousands of atheists gather at the National Mall in Washington, D.C. for the Reason Rally. Faithless, I believe you were there.
That's right, I was there. We braved the cool rain, a little bit of wind, and adverse weather, on-again showers, but we had great entertainment and inspiration. Before the scheduled events, I spoke with members of the crowd. I met Tim Minchin, I may be mangling that name, fans, and supporters of science, and a few Pastafarians. I met and spoke with Joe Beck, a supporter of atheists in foxholes, and we made a short video. Can we get the audio of that, Sam? Tell us when you got that going.
Thank you. My name is Joe Beck. I'm founder of Humanists of the Treasure Coast, and we're advocating equal treatment for atheist soldiers in rehab centers at VA household when they get sick or they're dying. Let's change that. Contact me at Humanists of the Treasure Coast. We'll work together on that. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Well, I believe that we have Joe has called in here. So why don't we see if we can bring him on now? Of course, he's talking to our screener. He may be surprised when he's on the air. Go ahead and push the button. Hello, Joe. Are you hearing us?
Yes, I am, Forrest.
All right. Well, great. We just played the little clip that I made of you. And we wanted to thank you for calling in. You're calling from where?
I'm calling from the Stuart, Florida area. Stuart, Florida, it's on the east coast of Florida. But I can assure you that the lack of services for non-religious veterans in Stuart, Florida is the same as it is in Washington, D.C. or in New York City or in your area.
All right. And you're actually part of a humanist group down there. What's their name again?
Yes, I founded an organization called Humanists of the Treasure Coast. And I did that because when I moved here to Stuart, Florida, I found out this was a very, very conservative area. And I knew there had to be other humanist, atheist, agnostics around. So I formed the group, and at this point we've got about 150 general members and probably 75 paid members.
All right.
And we have meetings in this area ranging from Jupiter, Florida to Sebastian, Florida. Specifically, we have meetings in Jupiter, in Stuart, and in Vero Beach.
All right. Well, of course, most of our viewers are going to be local, but we do know that there are people who watch the streaming feed well outside of this area, and we hope that, some people in your area might become aware of your organization. Now, Joe, you spoke to me about one of your members who was living in a VA medical assistance as he was I guess you may have even called it hospice, as he was approaching end of life.
Yes.
And you talked a bit about a letter he wrote. Could you share parts of that with us?
I certainly will. Essentially, I can read part of it. I can tell you his name because we have the signed letter. His name was Phil Haycock. He was a secular humanist, or he was a secular humanist and a Navy Vietnam era combat veteran. When he was on a battleship off the coast of Vietnam, and he would direct fire onto the enemy, and they were firing back. So he was, in a live fire situation. He entered the hospice at the West Palm Beach VA Center about 5 months ago, and at that point, he had been living at home, had had cancer for a number of years, and was slowly deteriorating. When he got into the VA system, they provided excellent medical care, and he began to rejuvenate. His diabetes got better, he looked better, sounded stronger, and he was continuing to have conversations with the staff, explaining to them that he was a secular humanist. Phil was essentially a staunch atheist. And the staff would say things like, we never, ever had an atheist here before. And he pointed out to them that since about 15% of the general population are non-religious, and that would hold true for the military, certainly they probably have at a minimum 10% of their patients are atheists or agnostics or humanists. And the fact that they haven't heard of any patients simply means that patients didn't feel comfortable coming out of the closet to the staff about their lack of religious belief. So the staff at the hospital began to relate to Phil and he to them. He was often visited by chaplains, and as he said to me, he said, Joe, he said, the chaplains, they just can't help themselves. They will say, God bless you or God loves you, even though they know, that I'm non-theistic and don't find any evidence for a God. He said, I try to be polite enough not to point out to them that there's no God, but they don't seem to understand that it doesn't help my heart, it doesn't help me to calm down when I have them come into my room knowing full well that, they're thinking when I pass away I'll probably be burning in hell, and I'm looking into their eyes thinking, how can they be so foolish as to believe what they believe? But Phil's primary goal was to motivate the VA Center to provide the same level of recognition and support to non-religious soldiers, veterans, as they do to religious veterans. Specifically, The VA system and most hospitals and hospices throughout the country have chaplains on board. Many times the chaplains come from a very fundamentalist evangelical background. Now, the chaplains will always say, you know, we provide services to everybody, and that's correct. They'll be happy to come into the room of an atheist and tell you that God loves you and that there's a Lord and Savior, and if you put your life in Jesus, you'll somehow be feeling better. They'll be happy to do that. What they aren't happy to do is to help you to find a fellow atheist, agnostic, or secular humanist who will provide support to you from your own perspective. And I was really amazed at the callousness, quite frankly, of many of the chaplains throughout the country. My career was working as a licensed social worker, and I assumed that once I met with a few chaplains and explained to them that, you know, when our people are in the hospital or a hospice, that our people would appreciate looking into the eyes and having a conversation with a like-minded person. Well, I was amazed they simply didn't get it. They say things like, you know, what would an atheist need? I mean, you don't believe in anything. And the facts are we do. You know, we believe in a lot of things, right?
In fact, don't we really believe that life, this is the only life and it's the most important thing? And, you know, we believe this is far more important than a little temporary stay here.
Exactly. And as a tribute to Phil, I'd like to mention that when his mother died, she was Catholic. Phil made certain that she had a Catholic priest at her bedside, and Phil assisted the Catholic priest, you know, in the, I think it's called extreme unction, but again, there were some oils involved, and he helped the priest to give his mother the last rites because he respected her. All that we're asking is for the professionals within the VA system, whether it's in Knoxville, Tennessee, or in Stuart, Florida. We're asking the healthcare professionals to simply make certain that their non-religious patients receive the same level of recognition and support as their religious patients. We don't want anything special. All we want is a similar plan of action. Very often the hospital administrators or the chaplains will say to us, well, look, to you religious people, you can always go to the social work department, or you can talk to a psychologist. And our comeback is, well, I guess if you want to do that, we could abide by that, and then there would be no need for chaplains because the religious people can talk to the social workers and can talk to the psychologists also. But as long as our tax dollars are paying full-time and part-time theistic-oriented chaplains, we think it's only fair and reasonable that the military, that our Defense Department provides support to the non-religious soldiers from a non-religious perspective. And I'm certain that the military will do this eventually, and they may even be leading the way on this in front of the civilian hospitals.
Yeah, that would be great. Well, can you read us part of Phil's letter then, so we can hear his words?
Okay, great. I am Phil Haycock, a secular humanist, Navy Vietnam veteran, and a resident at the West Palm Beach VA Hospice. I appreciate the medical, nursing, and social work services that I have received. The purpose of this letter is to request that you initiate policies that will ensure that non-religious veterans receive the same level of recognition and support as is currently provided to religious veterans. Currently, religious, theistic-oriented chaplains are on staff and visit patients, including secular, humanist, atheists like myself. While the chaplains have been friendly, according to their Christian beliefs, I will be burning in hell after my demise. While I respect their right to believe as they wish, I don't find their perspective on death comforting. Two of my roommates have already passed away, and out of respect to them, I listened quietly as a chaplain and a medical staff person came into my room and prayed over them. I request that you institute a policy that will ensure that when non-religious patients die, they will have their memory honored by a secular, humanist-oriented staff person in a manner similar to how the religious perspective of patients is currently recognized. In order to meet the needs of the more than 15% of your patients who are non-religious, I ask that you provide a secular humanist support representative to visit with non-religious patients to provide comfort and conversation from a non-theistic, secular humanist perspective. To to ensure that patients and family members are aware of the availability of secular support services, I suggest that a statement like the following be included on the VA Medical Center webpage and in material given to patients. Quote, for our non-religious patients and family members, supportive services are available from a secular humanist perspective by calling, and here Phil suggested that they list a VA extension. And then the VA extension person could either contact the VA representative on board, or they could contact an agency, an organization like ours, or another humanist organization to help provide these services until the VA actually hires their own person. And Phil gets to that. He says, until such time as your facility provides this support, Humanists of the Treasure Coast, of which I am a member, is available to the extent possible to provide supportive services to your secular-oriented patients. Thank you for taking the time to read this letter. I thank you in advance for instituting policy changes to meet the needs of your humanist, atheist, and agnostic patients. Now, Faithless Forest, I'm hoping that your listeners in your area will contact their senator and will contact the director of their VA hospitals and ask them to start delivering the equal amount of support and recognition to the non-religious veterans. Because, as I said, this is a nationwide problem. It's not just in our area, it's in every area of the country, because there's a complete disregard for the feelings of the non-religious members of the military. It starts when they're in basic training. They often are told they have a choice on a Sunday of going to church services. If they don't want to do that, they'll be assigned to KP. I have many members of the military tell me they felt discriminated against, felt they were denied promotion in the military when they were in the military. I've had people who served in World War II who told me they were not allowed to put the word atheist on their dog tag. That is now allowed. Congratulations to the Defense Department. The Defense Department also allows the atheist symbol at military cemeteries. We thank you for that. I believe the humanist symbol is in the process of being okayed, or it might even be okayed at this point. I'm not sure. The next step is to make certain that when our brave veterans are in a hospital or a hospice, that they can have a visit from a like-minded person. Somebody can just look into their eyes, and they can kid around. They can kid about the weather. They can kid about Rick Santorum's religious orientation to life. They can kid about a variety of things. They simply cannot have those type of conversations with a religious, theistic-oriented chaplain.
And in fact, I would think that the problem is with many chaplains, they might be trying to sell their product one last time in a way that's, you know, very inappropriate for someone who's already in a vulnerable position.
Yes.
So this letter from Phil, you told me that it was not sent while he was alive, but you've sent it now?
Right. Yeah, Phil and I discussed that, and after he signed the letter, he thought it might be wiser to hold off until after he passed away, because, you know, he thought he didn't want to alienate people. He knew he was in a very vulnerable position. He was in a hospital bed. He was increasingly non-ambulatory the last 3 weeks. And so he thought it would be wiser to postpone sending that letter until after his demise. And so we agreed to that game plan. And I just sent that letter out a few days ago. And as I said, it would be such a tribute to Phil and the other veterans in your area if your listeners could do the same thing.
All right.
To simply request that the VA centers provide the same level of support to the non-religious veterans.
All right, well, we've got a question passed in from our audience here.
Yes.
Can you recommend any training venue for those who might want to pursue the humanist hospice support role?
Well, quite frankly, it would be helpful. We're talking about a very simple morning training. The essence of it is to listen to the patient. In other words, you know, we're not here to push an atheist or humanist or agnostic patient in any direction. So the main thing is to be a good listener, to simply listen to people. If they have a request, if you can meet that request, fine. If you can't, it's always very acceptable to simply let the person know that you're not quite sure what to do, but you'd like to consult with a variety of people. There's an organization called the Humanist Society, which is a division of the American Humanist Association. They have a variety of humanist ministers or celebrants or officiants. These are people who have the same legal status as a cleric, only it's a non-theistic religion. I became a member of that organization so that I could officiate at weddings from a humanist perspective. But I think the training program would be very simple, something that I'm sure you folks have retired social workers or retired clinical nurses or retired psychologists on board or psychiatrists, and they could easily put together an orientation program which would simply emphasize that that the humanist visitor would show the same type of compassion that you would show to anybody in the general population.
I'd like to interrupt Joe and mention to our viewers that the Rationalists of East Tennessee has several members that have kind of performed the role that Joe is speaking of, acted as something like, well, grief counselors, and act to help people with transportation needs who may be undergoing medical treatment. So we do have some support for our own membership within this area.
No, I'm glad you mentioned transportation, because again, another realistic factor is when Phil was in the West Palm Beach Medical Center, he was about a 40-minute car ride from his residence. Now, there were people that could have visited him, but some folks had difficulty providing for gas money. Again, if you're Christian or belong to any kind of theistic religion, you don't have to worry about that because you have religious representatives already on staff getting paid to be there. So I'm just hoping that the non-religious community will develop a sense of outrage, because we've been such a humble, in the closet community, not asking for anything, and that's why there are no services for you and I or for our children. So if you have a child with cancer or leukemia or a broken arm and they're in the hospital, they're getting no support from their parents or families' humanist perspective, but I can guarantee you that they're getting visitors from chaplains.
Yeah, I can imagine that. Well, Joe, we've gotten through about half our allotted program time here. I'd kind of like to wrap things up so we get a few other people a chance to call in.
Thank you very much.
I had a great time, though, at the rally. We're going to talk a little more about that here, as well as we'll talk some more next week. Do you have any memorable moments from the rally yourself that you could leave us with?
Well, again, it was wonderful. Again, I was glad seeing you, though. I'd never met you before, but I saw you taping a variety of interviews, and I thought, doggone it, why didn't our group think of that? Because it was wonderful to see young people. As you know, it seemed that most of the people at the rally were under 45. I'm 71. You generally go to a humanist meeting, and there's people my age. When you see anyone that was in their 20s, it's like a miracle. And it was just wonderful. We saw humanist families. We saw humanist homeschooling families. It was a great experience, very uplifting, and I'm sure your listeners are going to enjoy hearing you give a description of what you saw at that rally.
All right. Well, that's great. It's great you pointed out about the youthfulness of the audience. That is a very remarkable thing.
Yes.
Joe,
thank you again for asking us to call in.
All right. Thank you for doing so, and we'll wish you then a good afternoon. Hope you watch the rest of the show.
Thank you very much, Forrest.
Bye then.
Okay. Bye-bye.
All right. Well, we had a few more comments about the atheist, the Rally for Reason. One of the speakers there, I'd never heard of him before, but it was Nate Phillips. His story, Phelps. Yeah, I mangled that. His story was very moving. He is the estranged son of the leader of the very hateful Westboro Baptist Church. You know, the ones who picket at funerals of American heroes? Well, you can go to his website, which I think is actually something like natephelps.com, and read about the night that he left his father's tyranny. You know, he was up waiting for the stroke of midnight, and the moment he turned 18, he walked out of that place.
And I wasn't at the rally myself, but I've gotten to watch his speech online, and what he said was very interesting, because he's kind of humorous, because he said that he left the hateful version of the church of his family to go to the kinder, gentler evangelical Christian community, which is, of course, the standard conservative side. And he had a great statement also where he said that if you're not familiar with Westboro, they often call their detractors rebels. You're a rebel, you're rebelling against God. And he said that for years that gave him shame, a great sense of shame, because he'd been raised within that community, and it's his family. But he said that he realized that when faced with the God of his father, rebellion is the only moral option. And I thought that was a very beautiful way of putting that.
As I said, it was a very moving story from someone whom I was completely unaware of prior to that. All right.
There was also Tim Minchin, who is an atheist musician. He sings a lot of humorous songs, but also a lot of them poke fun at religion and in different ways and forms. And he's really talented, and a lot of people enjoy him.
Well, I'd not heard of him before, but back in Knoxville, asking around later, I learned also that many were not aware of him. Maybe an age group difference here. But he sung a very humorous song, several, but we can't play them on the air. But we had great fun, and he did pause to make a very valid point, and we have a very short clip, which I think Sam is going to play for us.
This is fun, I guess. This is sort of fun. I don't want to be here. We don't want to have to be here. It's a pity, really, isn't it? That 300 years after the Enlightenment. We still have to be here, having a rally for the obvious.
Okay.
All right, great. Well, Ben, it looks like we got a caller here.
I think we should pause and take that.
Sure enough.
Okay.
Go ahead and push the button, and we'll take him away from the call screener.
All right.
You greet them.
Hello, caller. Welcome to Freethought Forum. Can we get a name or nickname?
This is Pastor Al.
Hello, Pastor Al.
Okay, Al.
You're on the air here with us, Al.
Hey.
So, and what is your question or comment? We were talking, of course, about the rally for reason.
No, it's the question that does God have moral limits? That's the question that you got.
Yeah. True. We haven't. That's the main program subject. We haven't gotten there yet. But
okay.
Do you have a short question or comment for us?
Well, I'm a pastor, so I figured I'd answer that question for you.
Well, great. I've never had that one answered.
Well, I'll answer it.
Okay. Go for it.
God is totally, 100% moral. He's totally, 100% holy, totally, 100% against sin, and totally, 100% loves the sinner.
Okay. Can I ask you a question?
Does that answer the question?
I don't.
No.
Not for me.
Okay, then ask me another way.
Okay, I will try. You say God is 100% moral and holy and against sin. The question is I know that we don't have the other question on there that really I think it's at the heart of the subject more. Is there something if God came to you and asked you to do something that is there anything that if he asked you to do it, would you refuse to do it and say no?
No, if God asked me to do it, I would do it.
Okay.
Unless it was a sin, because God wouldn't ask me to sin.
Okay. If he does. What about in the cases of there are cases in the Bible where God comes to people and asks them to kill people?
The enemies of God.
We're talking about children as well. Also killing children.
The godless nations, the atheists.
The nations.
The humanists, those that bow down to idols, yes. The ones that are against God.
Sir,
the true and living God said, kill those nations and kill those people.
Okay.
Yes, he did.
Stop, Al.
I understand what you're saying. I understand what you're saying there. First of all, we know even from what the Bible says that these nations were not godless. They did believe in gods.
No, they believed in a false god and
Yes.
false idol.
I
Read your
understand.
Bible again.
I understand. They believed in false gods and idols. I
They'll
understand.
worship the sun god, Ra.
What I'm trying to say, actually, hold on. What I'm trying to say, though, is that they weren't atheists because they still believed in gods. Even if they're false, they believed. The other thing is this.
Believe in a false god.
I understand, but it doesn't matter. I think you believe in a false god myself.
No, Jesus is absolutely 100% history.
No, I don't agree. But the
Well, it's an historical fact.
the question is on the moral, though. This God commanded people to kill children. In the case of Joshua in Jericho, for example, they took swords and thrust them into children, killing them that way.
Yeah, including the Canaanites and the Hittites and the Jebusites. He said, kill them all.
And if God came to you and told you to kill a child like that, would you do it?
No.
Why not?
Not in the Old Testament.
But why
Isn't
would
it
that
the same
matter?
God?
Why would it matter?
Why wouldn't you do it?
Why would it matter? Because when Jesus died on the cross for our sins, he changed the whole thing.
I don't see
Now it's
how.
love.
But if God asks him.
But if God asked you to do
I
this,
wouldn't.
you would not do it. If God said,
Definitely not. Definitely not. It's against Christian principles. In fact, Jesus...
But we're saying you're God.
Wait a minute,
If you're
wait a
God.
minute. Wait a minute. God said this. Jesus said that. Love your neighbor.
Right.
Pray for those who despitefully
Yes.
use you.
Yes. Now, is Jesus the Son?
God.
He is God, and he's the same God as the Old Testament. Yes.
Same God, Jehovah.
So Jesus, at one point, so Jesus is telling people, don't kill people, but back in the Old Testament, since he is God, he is telling people, kill people.
Yes.
So he's commanding completely opposite things, which is contradictory.
Well, that's why there's an Old Testament and a New Testament.
Right, it's contradictory. It means
Not contradictory.
it's contradictory to say kill children and then to say, oh, killing children is bad.
No.
Al, if that's not
Well,
contradictory,
let me
what
explain
is
why it was like that in the Old Testament. Can I explain to you why it was like that in the Old Testament?
Please explain what contradiction means first, because if you don't think they're not contradictory, I don't understand what contradiction means.
Definitely not. If Jesus said love your neighbor and that you're to love your enemies and that you're to pray for your enemies and you're to pray for those that despitefully use you,
Right.
you're to love sinners and try to win them to Christ.
Okay, that's not answering the question, though. The question is...
God is love.
But that's not answering the question. I understand that, but you're not answering the question. The question is, how is it not contradictory for the same being to tell one group of people, go out and kill your neighbors when they do this, kill your closest loved ones if they follow other gods, if they curse you, or anything like that, and then turn around and tell another group of people, if anyone does something to you, don't do anything mean to them.
Turn the other cheek.
Because in the Old Testament, it was the beginning of the earth. Remember? It was the beginning.
That doesn't answer the question, Al.
The beginning, I'm trying to explain it to you. It was the beginning of the races on the earth. And when Moses had that confrontation with Pharaoh in Egypt to let the people go, the Bible says it was that he hardened Pharaoh's heart, and then Pharaoh hardened his own heart. And Pharaoh, he wouldn't let the people go. And the Bible said that God brought all these, the flies, all the plagues.
I understand what the Bible says. What is your point?
The point is that God did that, and it says so in the Bible. God did that his name would be known throughout the entire earth.
Okay, so he ordered people to kill children and other peoples, kill loved ones, parents, etc., so that his name would be known?
That he would be known as the only true and living God.
Okay, my response to a God that would do that or command that of me is to refuse and say, you don't have to use violence to get your name known to everyone, especially...
Well, how are you going to think about God that when you die, you're going to go straight to hell? What are you going to think about that?
I'm fine with going to hell.
You're going to live at... You're not... This isn't the rest of your life here. When you die, you're going straight to hell if you don't trust Christ as your Savior.
I understand that claim.
To God you're dealing
I don't believe it. I don't believe the claim.
Can't make up God the way you want to make him
Let
out.
me talk to Al briefly here.
Go ahead.
So Al, I think we've kind of heard you answer the question about moral limits, and what you've told us is that you right now have better moral limits than the God of the Old Testament, and for that we must compliment you.
I never said that.
Yeah.
No, you absolutely did. You said you wouldn't kill children,
Right.
and we've got to say.
No, Jesus said not to.
And
But
you said
but you
would
wouldn't
not.
kill them, right? You would not kill a child.
Right.
Of course not.
But God would.
Great.
Of course not, but I'm not God.
Yes.
And in
so you're a
fact-
better person than God.
In fact, you've got.
Jesus said, love your enemies.
We are aware he said
Yeah,
that.
and Al, that's the great part. We're glad that you pick and choose that part
Yes.
out of the moral mishmash that is
Okay,
the Bible.
so what part do you
Joe,
want to
Al, we're going to move on now. Thanks for calling in.
Let me
and
say one more thing.
well, Al,
That shirt you're wearing is a lie.
Thanks.
Stop.
Thanks. Great. And please, if you've turned your audio back on, please, why don't you pray that Jehovah will come and reveal himself to me? Make that prayer, okay?
We are not opposed to any gods coming and talking with us. We are not opposed to that. We wouldn't even treat them badly. We would be very interested to meet them and hear what they have to say.
Yep. All right. Wow.
But thank you for your call, Al. It was a very, very good
It
conversation.
was very exciting, yes. All right. Well, I hear another call coming in at the call screener here. We need to give the screener a few moments.
All right.
Let's pick up where we were.
Yeah, Richard Dawkins.
Richard Dawkins. Okay. In fact, there were 3 people from the Richard Dawkins Foundation, and Dr. Elizabeth Cornwell spoke with great emotion about the issues for women's rights. And she really made the case that religious radicals want to enshroud women in what she calls an invisible burqa. And I urge people to go online and look for the Reason Rally videos and find the section from Elizabeth Cornwell. All right.
There were other events in D.C. The American Atheists had their own meeting, a convention, and held an ex-preachers panel, which had several pastors come out as being atheists, who had lost their faith but were still in the job, you might say.
All right. Well, let's move on to the main topic of the day. We're a little over halfway through the hour.
That's all right.
And today's topic is?
What would you not do for God? If God came to you and asked you to do something or do anything, what things would you refuse to do?
All right. Well, you know, sometimes back, George Bush was visiting Mubarak in Egypt, and they were out in the boondocks, and George sees an old man with a white beard and hair in the distance and asks Mubarak, "Hey, isn't that Moses?" George was so convinced it was Moses that he called out and motioned to the man to come by, but the man turned and started walking away. George, being a jogger, ran after him, caught up, and stopped him and exclaimed, "You must be Moses." The man replied, "Go away. The last time I talked to a bush, I had to roam the desert for 40 years.
Oh, that is funny. Yeah.
All right, so if you're once burned by a bush, you don't want to listen to him anymore.
Probably not.
So we ask viewers, if you're going to call in, and especially if you're going to quote the Bible at us, make sure you're prepared to cite chapter and verse. I have my Gideon in my hand.
And I have my Bible here. We'll be happy to look up verses should you need us to.
All right. So, Moses and what he did.
I guess we're going to talk about some of the evil things with killing children. We've already touched on that with the caller.
There are various characters within the Bible who is attaching this to our subject title. God came and asked many people, as we kind of alluded to in the conversation with Al, and would ask them to do things that Al now, according to what Jesus would say and teach, would be considered completely morally wrong and reprehensible and unthinkable. And so we're going to be looking at a couple of characters who did things like, you know, the God told them to do, and we wonder, you know, what people think of that and what they would do given the situation if they were approached.
Well, over my head here, I think we've got this famous story about Abraham. Abraham is the founding character in 3 great world religions. What are they? Maybe the viewers could call in and help us, or maybe we better not wait for viewers.
Well, Judaism, Christianity, and Islam all trace their roots back to Abraham.
Okay, so the oldest of these would be Judaism, and then somewhere around 2,000 years ago we had a revision to that. We call that Christianity, and then some 600, 700 years later, 660 some years later, a further revision, and that one is?
Islam.
Islam, all right.
Yeah. With Abraham, we have the well-known story of the sacrifice of Isaac, or, as it's more accurately described in its current form, the near sacrifice of Isaac, where Abraham takes his son, after God tells him to. God comes to him and says, Abraham, I want you to prove yourself to me. I want you to take your son up to the top of a mountain and sacrifice him to me.
Did it use the word burnt offering?
I believe so.
Because I'm thinking, I know in some of the artwork I've seen for it, they show them, bringing wood and stuff to make
it does talk about
pyre.
gathering up the wood for the altar, and it gets up to, and it goes up to the point where Isaac's on the altar tied up. His father had not informed him of what was going to happen, and they went on a 3-day journey to even get there, and so spent the entire time not telling someone what was going to happen. And he raises the knife in his hands, and then there's the intervention of the angel, who reaches out, seizes his arm, and offers him a ram instead. And it's interesting because he's informed that because he did not withhold his son, God will bless him. Which is interesting since he technically did withhold his son by that telling of the story. Which is also interesting.
And your point being that by not telling his son what he intended to do to him, that was somehow withholding his son?
No, the fact that he did not actually go through with it. He still had his son. He didn't really give up his son. He was prepared to, but didn't really do it.
All right, and that was because, of course, there was divine intervention.
Correct.
Let's contrast that with the story regarding Jephthah's daughter. Am I mangling
we have a
that?
caller.
Great. I'll say.
Hello, caller.
Please give us a name or a nickname and a short question or comment, and let's have a little back and forth.
Oh, can you hear me?
Yes.
Hi.
There is a 7-second delay, so please listen to your telephone if you're not already.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
What's your name or nickname, and what would you like to talk about?
Johnny Boy.
Johnny Boy. Okay, Johnny Boy.
Yeah, I've got something on my mind. I want to say that, for instance, say a man is born into the world, and let's say after 2 years, the little man can drink on his own and pick up food and eat on his own. And say he's taken away from his mother and society, and no human contact, and no conversation, no one teaching that person how to think or how to believe or any of that. And then 20 years later, you are released into society. Okay? I believe that person, even though never having been taught right from wrong, would know that it is wrong to pick up a rock and commit a heinous crime with it, or to do something that we would see as just radical and savage-like.
Well,
you want to go first?
And if there is no God, how would that human being know inside that that is wrong?
Okay. Well, you touch on several interesting issues there. The question about right and wrong, and sometimes the word sin is used. Within the atheist community, we often define sin as a crime against God, and because we don't believe in a God, we say that it is a victimless crime. Another way we say it is that a person alone on a desert island with no one around to interact with is not capable of committing something like sin or immoral actions because there's no one to harm.
Right.
But actually, you're making another subtle point. You're alleging that someone who was somehow managed to grow up but without people around would still know right and wrong. So that's the gist of your question, right? Or your assertion?
you're saying that people would intrinsically know right from wrong even without being taught?
Right. How without looking at it in terms of sin?
Okay, so without looking at it in terms of sin, you're just saying knowledge, knowing, and right and wrong.
And you said specifically not to take a rock and kill someone.
Extreme matters.
Okay.
So, I have to comment that, that experiment's not been done pretty much. Most people just can't raise themselves. It takes community to bring a child to adulthood.
We are pack animals.
And we also know that being raised with other people doesn't guarantee a good outcome.
Right.
One of the books that we read in the book club for the Rationalists of East Tennessee was called The Sociopath Next Door. And they explain that about 4% of people, 4 out of 100, do not feel the normal emotional connection to other humans and the normal kind of empathy for other people experiencing pain. And these people are sociopaths. They are capable of doing very cruel things, and they do so because it entertains them, let's say.
Right.
And yet those are people who are raised in families maybe even very religious. So we have the converse shows as well, that just raising people and even telling them about religious myths doesn't prevent them from being immoral.
On that, you actually have, I could identify maybe two things you're trying to raise. In the first one he's been addressing, you're putting forward this hypothetical scenario where I'm sure you meant more than just 2 years or a few years, but this person who grew up on their own and survived and then goes into human society. Well, there are many rules they would not have any understanding of, such as stealing, because they would have no concept of personal property. They may not even have any concept of the rules about sexual relations or such things as rape, because they've not been around other people to know how people feel about that.
And that's why I say in extreme manners.
But I'm saying these are all the main things. And murder may not have even been something that he understands and not supposed to kill people because he hasn't been around other people to make those agreements and to have those understandings. Morality tends to arise out of making agreements among people. If you're on an island on your own, as Lee mentioned, you have no moral codes because you have no one with whom to interact unless you don't require morality in that instance. The other thing you were asking in a godless situation where we're atheists and we don't have a God or we don't have that idea of innate moral senses. And I'm going to let you respond here to make sure I'm getting this right. You're wanting to know how we arrive at our moral ideas, correct?
Yes, exactly.
Okay. I would say that it's largely because we grow up together, we live in communal groups, and it's been that way since before we even were able to reason much about it. It's like asking, why don't the cells in my hand just not get along? It's like, why do they get along? Well, because they have to in order to continue going on. It's like a chemical reaction in that sense. But where we get them from is from interacting with each other and saying, hey, I would rather not suffer. I would rather not, have Lee attack me, or vice versa. So we come up with agreements, social contracting.
I'd go just slightly farther because I can't keep quiet on this. I enjoy interactions with other human beings, and I know that I won't get that pleasure of interacting if I don't behave civil towards them.
Right.
It's for the most selfish of reasons. It works.
Right.
Yeah. So I have to say I don't think that the experiment as you proposed has ever been done or is actually even possible, because to make it to something like adulthood, we just have to be cared for. We're not capable of getting there without it, right. And that natural interaction is going to civilize us to the extent that whatever society we're brought up in is civil.
Have we addressed what you wanted to ask and what you said, and was there any follow-up you wanted to ask or say?
Yeah, my only follow-up was just for you to, try the perception on the idea of looking at yourself in the mirror and asking yourself, if that were you, how would you know that it would be wrong to walk up and commit something that is disgustingly a heinous, malicious act? You would know inside yourself that would be wrong.
I'm
to
sorry.
look at the big picture, it seems like someone must be telling you that was wrong.
Okay, you said if it were you, if I were who? The person you
image
described?
in the mirror, I think.
Sure.
The image in the mirror.
The person you described in the former thing about being raised on your own, or the person? Are you talking about a mirror?
The person being raised on your own, all on your own,
Okay.
never having experiences. How would you know that it would be wrong? I feel like I would know that would be a terrible thing to do, even though not having been taught.
Okay, well, a couple things. First of all, if that were my situation, the best I can figure, since I know that moral concepts really come from community and so forth, I probably would not, and I would probably go into that situation. Now, bear in mind, I have to distinguish the me you're asking me to consider from the me I am. I can't say I would like to think I would, as I am, not do that. It's like when you say that you think you would know. Well, that's because perhaps you're coming at it from your current perspective, where you have been raised in community and have been raised around other people.
Johnny, do you remember when you maybe learned that you shouldn't hurt other people? I do. So what do you remember?
That's really a tough way of looking at it. I can't remember the first time that I would know that would be wrong.
Well, I remember very clearly. My mother, would explain to me when I was being naughty, as little children can be, and maybe hurting a pet, or my little sister, who was littler and even more defenseless. She would explain that hurts. Imagine what it would be like if it was happening to you. And I had the capability to make that imagination, and that moderated my behavior. So it was my mother encouraging me to display that empathy to fellow living creatures that made the light go on, and aha, now I'm more moral.
And that was your mother's reaction to what you did, but when you were doing it, you knew it was wrong. Right?
I don't think I was sophisticated enough to know. It was at her urging for me to mentally put myself in the place of someone else that I could then say, oh, I got it.
Right. It required teaching.
I probably was 3 years old.
Okay. Well, that's my only question, and why I wanted to call was, I wanted to see your answer. So.
Before you go, our audience here has asked us to invite you down to the meetup. We meet at Barley's Tap Room, it's called, in the Old City. We're meeting there right now, and some of us will be there, probably
we'll be there a little later.
8-ish or so. And we actually enjoy discussing philosophical things like this.
And we would love to have you there to continue this conversation, or anything else you would like to talk about.
May we ask, how did you find us? And have you watched before?
No, I've never watched before. I just was clicking through the channels.
Okay. Well, thank you for calling.
Absolutely. Thank you.
We'll be on every Tuesday. You're welcome to call in again and keep watching.
Great. Thanks much.
Thank you.
All right, well, viewers, there's about 6 minutes left. We have time for some more calls, but please call promptly. All right, so we were talking about, I think it was Jephthah's daughter.
We were about to get on Jephthah.
All right, and so this is a different setup. In the first setup, God came to Abraham and said, sacrifice your son for me.
Right.
God had also put him through some previous tribulations. The son didn't happen till late in life. And so I think the setup on that was to make Isaac seem even more
valuable,
more precious. So who's Jephthah, and what's the story there?
Jephthah was one of the judges. He's found in the book of Judges, chapter, I think it starts in 10 and goes through 11, but the story we're going to be discussing is actually in 11. And he was one of the people, as the book suggests, God raised up to help defend Israel in times of great turmoil and trouble. And Jephthah made a vow. It says that the Spirit of Lord came upon Jephthah, and he made a vow to God, saying that if God granted him victory in a battle, he would sacrifice to God the first thing which came out of his door to greet him when he returned from battle.
And as fate would have it, that first thing was?
It was his daughter.
And only child, too.
Yes, a very similar story. And as a result of this, he cried out, I think he even ripped his clothes in sign of mourning, and was despaired. But the thing was, he didn't refuse. Instead, he told his daughter what he would have to do to her, and eventually did it. He gave her like a month to...
I think it was 2 months or something like that.
Yeah, a month or two to go
ponder and worry over her fate.
Well, largely over the fact that she would die a virgin. And so, and I don't know why she didn't run away during the time. But she came back, and although many Christians will disagree as to what exactly it means, it seems obvious that he did sacrifice her.
Yeah, on various apologist websites, some of them will try and explain it away that, oh, well, she was sent off to a nunnery or something.
Right.
But other websites say, well, no, the Hebrew words are very clear. It's a burnt offering.
Right.
She was killed and her body was burnt to create a sweet savor to the Lord, I guess,
right.
just like just like Noah started doing. All right. Well, it sounds like the phone has rung again. If we don't get that one passed into us quick, we'll have to ask them to call back in another week.
Right.
So if we move on, enough of killing children, let's move up to killing cities. The story of Joshua. So how's that play out?
In the case of Joshua, the Israelites had just gotten out of the wilderness. Moses had died, not being allowed to continue into the Promised Land. And there were people living there known as the Canaanites. And so Yahweh told them, you're going to have to wipe these people out to get the space. And so they started a huge campaign. And it's interesting because often Christian apologists will try to say that God tried to reach them, and the Canaanites, that is, reach them and save them, but it's not in there, and it's not. I can't find it anywhere in the text. And also in Joshua 11:20, it says that Yahweh actually hardened the hearts of the Canaanites so they would not pursue peace, but rather be willing to fight and be destroyed. And Joshua, Jericho is the most notable example because big name and well known in the following of the walls. You have the complete and utter destruction.
We've got our interrupt. You greet him.
Hello, caller. We got a couple minutes left on the show. Could we get a name or nickname and what you question or comment?
And please make it quick.
My name is Evelyn.
Evelyn, hello.
Yes. Yes.
Thanks for calling, Evelyn. Comment or question quickly, please.
I have a comment.
Okay.
All I want to say is that God loves everybody, and my prayer is to you that God does reveal Himself some way or another to you, that you could accept His eternal salvation.
Okay, you're referring to the Christian God, yes?
Pardon?
You're referring to the Christian God?
Yahweh?
Yes, I am.
Okay. Let me ask you this, and what is it we're to be saved from?
From the fact that Jesus is the Son of God, and He came and died on the cross for us.
Okay.
He is the only door for which you can have eternal life.
That's not what I'm. Pardon. I don't mean to interrupt you. We only have a minute left. That's not what we're being saved from, though. That's just, you're saying that's how we'd be saved. But I'm saying, what is it we're being saved from?
And please answer within 15 seconds.
You're being saved from, heaven is real, hell is real, and you're being saved from hell if you accept Jesus as your personal Savior.
Okay.
Let's thank her and move on.
Evelyn, I'm sorry, we are actually out of time, but I would like to invite you to call back in next week. And I thank you for calling in.
Thank you for thinking of us. You have a good day.
Thank you so much.
You take care.
All right, bye then. All right, well, man, we need to move on to the closing here.
All right.
It's time to start wrapping things up. Please get out a pen and paper. Hope we've given you time enough.
Yeah. This has been Freethought Forum, a program by the Atheist Society of Knoxville and the Rationalists of East Tennessee.
Please send us feedback. Leave voicemail at
888-960-9060, or email us at freethoughtforum@yahoo.com.
And anyone who's friendly toward atheists, you're welcome to join us at Barlow's this evening.
All right. You can see this show on Tuesdays from 5 to 6 p.m. Eastern Time here on this Knoxville station, or at 2200 Universal Time worldwide at CTV Knox.
We would like to send our thanks to Sam and Jonas for technical support and to the staff.